Lavanya from YourPedia, and today we're going to discover 7 things that you should definitely not do in your IELTS writing task to get a 7 band. I know everyone is telling you to do this or that, do this or that, something or other, whenever you're going to prepare for your IELTS writing. But here are 7 things that you should definitely avoid if you want to get a band score. So let's start with the first one. The first one is not understanding the question. Misunderstanding the question, that is, not getting full score on a task achievement, is the most common way students lose their marks in IELTS writing. And as writing, especially for essay, it's not like you'll get a one-word question. You'll have sentences and you'll have to understand them and then answer your question. For this, you need to actually recognize how many questions there are. Not often do you notice that in IELTS you only have one question. Normally, there are 2 or 3 hidden aspects of it always. Not only that, there are certain times when students only focus on one question and do not answer the other parts of it. That is actually how you will lose a lot of your marks. So to avoid that, let's look at a question and I'll tell you how you have to perfectly understand the question. For example, a question is written here. Many people believe that today there is a general increase in antisocial behavior and lack of respect for others. What might have caused the situation? How do you improve it? Now, you see, first of all, you need to recognize that 2 keywords here: antisocial behavior and lack of respect for others. So, they are talking about 2 personality attributes that many students, or you can say Gen Z these days have, and they want to know, first of all, what has caused the situation, and second, how can you improve it? So, in your essay, you not only have to focus on one thing, like people are very introverted these days, you have to say how rude they are too. And you have to do this in different paragraphs. While doing this, you also have to answer how can the situation be improved. If you do not include any of these four, your score for task achievement will go down. To avoid this, you need to create a paragraph that talks about antisocial behavior, another one that talks about respect, lack of respect for others, and at last you need to give tips on how can the situation be improved or resolved. It is very important that whenever you see any question, you look at all the parts of it and you answer all of them. Not understanding the whole question or leaving a certain part of it in your essay will result in a really bad bounce score. Okay, that's the first thing. Now, for the second tip, repeating the same words over and over again in your IELTS essay. This is actually a red area for everyone. Whenever you see a question in IELTS, they'll have certain keywords, just as I pointed out before. In the above before question discussed one, we noticed that the keywords were antisocial behavior and lack of respect. Now, in your essay, if you keep on repeating these words over and over again, if you kept on saying respect this, respect for that, respect this, respect that, and you said antisocial, 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 if you use these words over and over again, your mark for lexical resources, which is another parameter in IELTS, it's just another fancy word for vocabulary, to be honest. Okay, this will go down, and that is something you need to avoid, obviously. All right, so you should actually try and practice that you never repeat a certain keyword again. Always use synonyms. Remember to use as many synonyms and paraphrasing your sentences as possible. Okay, repeating the same word over and over again, even something as simple as people or individual or let's say students, try to use their synonyms or other words that fit that sentence. Do not use that same word over and over again. Your goal should be that you used a keyword once and you're not going to repeat it again in that essay. All right, so that was the second tip. Now moving on to the third tip. This one is really important and something, for some reason, many students avoid for no reason at all. So the tip is that you have to follow the essay structure that has been given. Avoid not giving 4 different paragraphs. So normally in IELTS writing, especially for essay, but also for report, we make 4 paragraphs at least. Okay, the first is introduction, then we make 2 body paragraphs, 1 and 2, and then we give in conclusion. For some reason, many students actually forego this and they sometimes make only 3 paragraphs. Sometimes they don't even make any paragraph and they write this whole essay as one big chunk of passage. You should not be doing that. Every essay you write should have multiple paragraphs in it, and the minimum number is 4, as in this structure. You can definitely add more body paragraphs if you have more content and time, but this is the minimum requirement for getting a good band score. So always follow the essay structure that has been taught to you in your classes through online or whatever. This is the bare minimum that you absolutely need to do. All right, you need to follow that structure. You need to follow the guidelines that have been given for how to write your introduction, for how to write your body paragraphs or your conclusion. This is very important. Do not write just one big chunk of passage or just one paragraph as a whole essay. That is not how it's done. That's another thing you need to keep in mind. Then the fourth step is not adding examples in your essay. This is something that takes a little bit practice to actually inculcate in your answers. But once you actually are able to inculcate examples in your answers, you are set for. So normally, whenever we're writing an IELTS essay, in your body paragraphs, we have a specific structure in our mind. So the first thing we do for that is that we in one body paragraph, yes, we introduce a point, then we explain it a little, and then we give an example that is related to that. At the end, we give another point, okay, and then at the end we just conclude it, and this all happens in just one body paragraph. Yes, many times what happens is that students, because that is what we have been taught in school, we actually install like 7 to 8 points, in fact, in just one body paragraph. We do not explain it at all, do not give examples, and then we just move on to another body paragraph and give more points. That is something that should not be done. That has to be avoided at all cost. What you have to do is that take only 2 or 3 points, take the best points out of all of them. Write an intro about it, like just one right sentence, then explain it a little bit in detail, then use an example. This is really good, and this is something that you should try to do. Give an example that explains your point even better, and then give another point, and then conclude both of them together. That's how a perfect as body paragraph is written for an essay. All right. So not adding examples in your essay can be very bad for your band score. Not getting here. All right. You have to try your best to include an example that is relevant to the point that you have said in that body paragraph. It is very important. Then the fifth and probably the most common one, the one that you were all expecting, you have to avoid grammatical errors. Grammatical errors include everything from not adding a and the before words, or even something like tenses and prepositions, even adding not the correct conjunctions. That is very brutal for your score. So you have to work on your grammar a lot. There are few certain topics such as articles, prepositions, conjunctions, and tenses, which are a must for everyone to study if you want to get a good score. All right. So these topics should be done well in detail, and you should pay a lot of attention to them. Try to make sure that you're writing grammatically correct sentences. In IELTS, there are 4 different parameters on way you are judged. The first is task achievement. We have already covered it, right? You have to understand the question. The second is vocabulary. That is lexical resources, actually. So vocabulary, lexical resources, as in do not repeat the third same word over and over again. The last was actually grammatical errors. Avoiding grammatical errors is very important, because you need to make sure that every sentence you write is not only, saying a good sentence, saying a good point, but it is actually comprehensible to the reader. And it will be comprehensible if it is grammatically correct. So make sure your grammar is perfect. All right. Then, sixth point, and the one that is very commonly used, is that not giving a good conclusion. You have to avoid not giving a good conclusion. What is a conclusion and what is a good conclusion? Let me tell you what normally how most students conclude their essays. Maybe your essay was, let's say, about what we discussed before, and antisocial behavior in students or in people in general. So your conclusion would probably be, so yes, I agree that students these days or youngsters these days are extremely introverted and do not care for the world. My essay before has proved that, and I hope that we will work on these behavioral disorders on our own in our own time, or they will work on them rigorously. Now, that is a conclusion that most students very oftenly write, but that's not the correct conclusion, to be honest. A perfect conclusion, a good conclusion, should include the points that you have discussed in your body paragraph in 1 or 2 words. So maybe while you were pointing out the solutions or when you're pointing out why is it happening, you want to say something like the amount of time they spent on social media or something like how they have distanced themselves from their parents because of generation gap. Now, in this case, you'll just write the keywords in your conclusion to refer to that and connect it. So you need to actually say, thus, as discussed above, uh, social media, the generation gap, etc., whatever points you've discussed, are the reasons students or youngsters these days are not as extroverted as they were before. And the biggest and the best solution for this would be this. So you need to actually mention what you have written in your body paragraphs in a good conclusion. That is very important. All right. So do discuss, and I'm like not discuss, but at least mention what you have written in your body paragraphs in your conclusion. It is very important. Do not just write 2 sentences for a conclusion. Give a good conclusion. Give it some thought. And after that, you can also include your own points, your own beliefs on that. You can also include solutions, remedies, or maybe even consequences, something that has not been discussed in your essay. You can mention that here right now in the conclusion. That is how you can write a good conclusion. Your conclusion should not be like the last thought in your mind. It should not be unplanned. You should plan it along with your body paragraphs. That is very important. Okay, so avoid not giving a good conclusion, I mean. All right. Then the last point, and to be honest, according to me, the most important one, not proofreading. In IELTS, you get 40 minutes to write your essay and 20 minutes to write a report. Everyone who's going to give IELTS is probably not used to, most of us at least, are not used to writing so much. Like in 1 hour, no one is used to writing 500 words. Most of us aren't actually. Now, in that case, it is very common that if you're giving a computer-based IELTS, then you're making a lot of typos, or maybe if you're giving a pen paper-based IELTS, then you have made some grammatical errors or maybe even spelling errors here and there. In order to take those out before the exam is finished, you need to save yourself time, at least 2 to 3 minutes, just to proofread. Proofreading is extremely important. Half the errors that you make while you're writing can be fixed by you, by yourself. Like you can do it on your own if you just proofread diligently. That is very important. Okay. So not proofreading is something you should avoid at all cost. Always save 3 to 4 minutes or at least 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, for proofreading at the end of every test that you give, every practice test, even you should save some time for proofreading. You can take a lot of errors out in that way. Any sentence that doesn't make sense that you thought made sense before, anything like a grammatical error or spell errors. Now these can be fixed by your own time in without getting the invigilator or the checker involved. That is very important, all right? So do save yourself some time for proofreading. So this was the end of 7 things that you should definitely avoid in order to get a good IELTS band score in writing. I hope you had a fun time and that you learned a lot. I'll be here next week with another video. Till then, goodbye and keep practicing.